I call the April 17th meeting of the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement to order. A quorum is present. The first item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from April 3rd, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Representative O'Driscoll moves approval of the April 3rd, 2023 meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion prevails and the minutes are adopted. Members, we have a short agenda today, so our first agenda item will be approval of a resolution on behalf of St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund Association due to their statutory requirement. I will move the M1 resolution to be considered by the commission. Executive Director Linczewski, will you please explain the M1 resolution?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Under Minnesota statutes, section 356.215, changes to actuarial assumptions proposed by the plans must be approved by the commission if they are to take effect for the next annual actuarial valuation for the plan. If the commission does not take action, they will take effect a year later. For St. Paul teachers, the need for changes in the actuarial assumptions is a result of an experience study conducted by their actuary, GRS, for the period July 1, 2016 through June 30th, 2021. The experience study compares actual experience to the assumptions, and it's a good time to recalibrate those assumptions when the actuary determines that the changes should be made to reflect actual experience. So in front of you is a motion as well as a letter from St. Paul Teachers Board of Directors requesting the changes, and then also attached is the short summary of the experience study. Also available online is the entire experience study if you should want to read some of the background and some of the other conclusions.
Thank you, Director Linczewski. I believe we also have the Executive Director of St. Paul Teachers as well, Mr. Philip Tensek. If you want to go ahead and provide any information you'd like to for the commission.
Chair Hurd, members of the commission, good morning. Sorry to bring you in after our fireworks show at the Omnibus last week for this minor action today. Would just note that the experience study is a regular part of the actuarial review, comparing the actual results to our assumptions. Had a number of minor changes. I can walk through them very quickly. We found that payroll growth was less than expected. Normal retirements happened slightly earlier than expected. Probably the good news in the story was that withdrawal rates, so teachers terminating from the plan after their first couple of years, were down significantly, so we've had much better retention within the plan. Disability rates were also lower than expected. And then the mortality tables, we were able to use a teacher-specific table with this experience study. Overall, essentially cost neutral. It increased these assumption changes would increase our sufficiency by 14 basis points, so 0.14%. And I'm here for any questions as well.
Members, discussion to the M1. I think that's a good thing, Mr. Tensek. There's no discussion to the M1. Seeing there's no further discussion, I will move the M1 resolution, which states that we move the approval of changes to the actuarial assumptions used in the annual actuarial valuations of the St. Paul Teachers Retirement Fund Association, effective beginning with the actuarial valuation as of July 1st, 2023, as identified in the attached letter from F. Michael McCollar in your packets. As noted in the letter, the assumption changes were recommended by Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company, the association's actuary, and approved by the association's Board of Trustees. All those in favor of adopting the M1 resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. And the motion prevails and the resolution is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Tensek. And I feel really bad that we met at 8:30 this morning and the agenda is short today, but I really appreciate all of you who are here today joining us in this commission, our members and those who are who come in attendance just to see all the great work that we're doing here. So the final agenda on our item is consideration of a list of possible legislation. When we started this work in January, I made a promise to everyone that we will likely not get through everything, but that everything that comes forward to us, we do our best to really to try to address and understand the issues. And so the topics, we've been collecting a list of topics for the 2023-2024 interim. As you all know, the commission has hosted consistent hearings and considered numerous pieces of legislation by hearing from a lot of testifiers the entire year. In your packet, there is a copy of the list, and it's in packet item number 3, which includes both areas that we did not have time to consider yet this year, as well as next steps. In areas of legislation, we did include the work of the commission. The goal of discussing the list is to add possible items from commission members, as well as to gauge the membership's interest in working on these individual items over the interim. I will now turn it over to Executive Director Lenchesky to run through the list of items that we've collected.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The list of items here are divided into those that I guess we would consider as required items, items that we need to work on through the interim to have them ready for next session, and then some discretionary items. I'm hoping that the commission and the chair will direct staff as to what we should do in terms of the discretionary, kind of help us prioritize. For the first group here, we have a couple of items that are driven by some legislation. The first is a work group on transfers from Minnesota State IRAP to TRA. That will happen. There are some requirements in the statute, assuming that our omnibus bill is approved, and then on to the governor for enactment. The second bullet is to work with PARA to draft legislation to add a defined contribution component to the statewide plan. This is the volunteer firefighter plan, and make other changes that might entice more reliefs to want to join the statewide plan. The third item is the legislation that was not able to be taken up, that was part of the state auditor's fire relief working group recommendations. The fourth is to prepare legislation that PARA has requested to amend the treatment of survivor benefits throughout their statutes. The fifth is to prepare legislation to expand eligibility to the para-defined contribution plan. This was some legislation that we looked at and actually did approve to expand it to appointed officers in addition to elected officers, but there are some other changes that could be made to expand eligibility. And then the final item is assessment of pension bills not heard by the commission during the 2023 session. We do have a list of those, and we'll be working with the chair to see what should be looked at further this interim and then brought forward next session for the commission. There is a long list of discretionary items here. I will just note a couple of them. One is the standards for actuarial work. It's really drudgery to do this job, but it does need to be done. And if the commission is interested in taking that up over the interim, we can work on that with our actuary and with the plans and update that. I think the last time it was updated was in 2010. And then a couple other items have to do with the section 356.24. This section deals with supplemental plans, and we did talk about that in the context of multi-employer plans, but there are some other provisions there that seem to get a lot of attention. One is having to do with the 403B plans, and then also other deferred compensation plans and some disclosure and reporting requirements there. Then there are just a number of other items that we have looked at on and off. The first one, of course, being moving the actuarial assumptions for investment rate of return from the statutes to commission oversight and approval, and then several others on the next page of the list here.
Thank you, Ms. Lenchesky. And I do just want to remind the commission that these discretionary items, I know I could already see one or two of these that maybe Representative O'Driscoll may not necessarily like, but I think just remember that this is just things that we collected based on what other people have told us that they felt was important to them or that they might want to look at. And so it does not mean that we have to do it, but I do want us to just kind of look through this list, and that this commission has been really wonderful in like digging into this work. And I also want commission members to know that if there is a topic that you particularly care about, that you want to take the lead on, I am super open to that. I think it is important that we are all leaders on this team, so any one of us could take charge in some of this work. And then also, if there's anything that is missing that you want to see on here, that we're continuing to add to the list to ensure that we cover everything that people are interested in for us exploring. And so with that, I am going to just ask if there's anyone in attendance today and who would like to address the commission on these items or what is not on this list. So Auditor Blaha, please come on up. And if you and Rose could just state your name for the record and then begin, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Herr, Vice Chair Frentz, and members of the commission. My name is Julie Blaha. I'm your state auditor. I'm also joined by Pension Director Rose Hennessy-Allen here for any technical things. So first off, I want to thank you so much for including the rest of the Office of the State Auditors Fire Relief Association Working Group's proposal in your interim plan. Now, to help you plan your work, I want to describe where the language of the proposal is at this point. But first, a little context on how our group operates. Since its inception in 2004, our working group only puts forward proposals on non-controversial items that have unanimous support of the group members. Working group members include both Metro Area and Greater Minnesota Relief Association trustees, representing each plan type, also fire service organizations and municipal representatives. Now, besides the members, Pension Commission staff, Director Susan Linchewski and former staffer Chad Burkett, and often both, attended every meeting and received all the reading materials. We share our work in a newsletter to about 2,500 members of the public and financial community. We post our documents on our website. We live stream and archive our meetings on YouTube. So if you want to relive every scintillating moment, you can go do that right now. Now, to accommodate the schedules of firefighters who serve on our group and also to work around legislative deadlines that affect our pension staff, our working group historically has met from October to December with a wrap-up meeting in January. So this year, for instance, in January, we voted on specific bill language, and then we send that completed language over to LCPR staff for any final tweaks. And this year, we understand that those tweaks were completed in February, just before staff member Burkett took his new position. Also, in February, we really appreciate that you all were able to meet with us one-on-one with our OSA staff, Rose, Donald, right here, and go over some of the details of our bill. And so only one item in our proposal, as you heard, was presented to this committee due to LCPR staff capacity issues, the audit threshold item. Now, still remaining are clarification to when municipal ratifications are required, definitions of different types of firefighters, an investment report certification clarification, and a benefit clarification to how reliefs pay out disability and survivor benefits when they're dissolved. Now, while we can hold off until next year, these items are overdue, and we have heard from a number of stakeholders that they are eagerly anticipating action, particularly on the definitions, which is some people's top issue, and also dissolution language, which we really have to clean up so that administration can take some next steps. So the good news for your scheduling is that this bill should be ready for your consideration in short order. And we wanted to make sure you knew that OSA staff and also members of our working group will be available during the interim. If you want us to present the bill during the interim, meet with you, however we can assist, we are up and ready to do so. So again, thank you, and we look forward to catching this all up over the interim.
Thank you, Auditor Blaha. Is there any, Senator Pappas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm disappointed that we didn't include the working group's recommendations. I'm just wondering if there was a scheduling problem, if they need to move up their schedule so that their recommendations can be presented to us at an earlier time, or, you know, staff did attend a lot of the meetings, so I assume that they were on top of everything. I mean, was this a result of Mr. Burdick leaving? I know that Ms. Linchewski had like hundreds of bills that members had asked her to draft, and I think we need to get a handle on that. That especially, I was glad that the chairperson, you know, put a stop to it at some point when we weren't going to be considering any more of these this year. Our bills were wrapping up. I feel the same way about, you know, bonding. We had over 500 bills, and it was a lot of work for staff and the revisor's office to do that. And a lot of them were not going to be under consideration this year.
Thank you, Senator
So is there
Pappas.
any way that we could work better to make sure that their recommendations do get addressed?
Thank you, Senator Pappas, and I think that that's something that we can definitely look at. You are correct. It was actually kind of a convergence of a couple of those items. I understand that Mr. Berkowitz was working on this, and though there were many things that maybe in just, you know, his preparation for going to another position, some things didn't get wrapped up or done. And then Ms. Linchewski's office was inundated with hundreds of requests for bills, and she is the only person on staff that actually drafts the pension bills, and so there was a lot to do with that. And then I would love to maybe have a conversation with Auditor Blaha, and maybe like, is there a possibility that the group can meet sooner and wrap up before December so that then we can have things drafted on a year where we start, session right away in January. And I think any of us could have anticipated the pace in which we ran things in this trifecta, and that we hit the ground running and immediately started hearing bills. And so maybe this wouldn't be an issue in any other year, but except for this year, because of the pace, it might have just been that as well. But maybe, for us to consider the possibility of, maybe having that last meeting in December versus January, and then working on the draft. So Auditor Blaha.
Thank you, Chair Herr, and also Senator Pappas. I know we've had this conversation a couple of times, this schedule really is built around our firefighters. And so to change the schedule, to move it into the summer, really not an option, since they are quite busy in the summer. Our ROSA staff in September is scrambling to make sure that we're making sure our reliefs hit those legislative deadlines so they can get their funding. So really, starting in October is about the soonest we need to start. So one of the ways we go around that, I think we have to be clear, we actually write the language, right? We're not expecting LCPR staff to draft the language. We draft it. And in fact, we pass the exact language in our committee. And so we only have tweaks after that. And that's one way we try to help, is that we're actually drafting it ourselves. We vote on the specific language. Again, our goal is always to wrap it up in December. But we're not saying, hey, here's some topics, go write it up. That, I think, would be one of the problems. And then I think if we were asking LCPR staff to write it, I would say, yeah, then you can give us the October deadlines you might give other people. But we do write that language. And so our pension commission, our pension team, as well as our legal staff, give the first draft, then we get tweaks on that. So for instance, this year, it really, if I understand it, it is actually complete. That we understood, we signed off on the final tweaks, and we thought it was ready to go. But again, I don't begrudge anybody who's lost a third of their staff all in one fell swoop. I absolutely understand what happened this year. I think this is quite unusual. But for us to change our schedule, it would be harder for us to actually also provide completed language. Our goal, again, is always to wrap up in December. And to be clear, our language is also started. So there are several steps along the way where language is approved throughout the time. So it's not like nothing is done until January. So we have things going forward, and that's also why we've been very lucky to have LCPR staff at our meetings. So some of the stuff we can talk about, and they can give us feedback right there. So I think that to change the schedule, again, we will work to get it done in December. We can certainly work to do that. But to shift it further than that, we would either bump into the session, or we would bump into a time when our firefighters simply can't be there.
Thank you, Auditor Blaha, and I appreciate that explanation. I know from the legislative side of it, I did know that we did ask Ms. Lancheski to, we do ask her to look at how the language interacts with current statute, or how potential changes might impact how we execute some of this work. And so I understand it's not just a matter of her taking the language and then presenting it to us. And so there is work on the staff side in order for them to ensure that the language works the way it should, the way we intended to. And so, I think that everyone is working really hard, and under these circumstances, it's been challenging. And so I think that, if there's not an ability to look at the timing, I think maybe this might have been an anomaly year, and I'd love to have further discussion about how we can ensure that this work is done. And I do want to remind the commission that even though session is out, around May 19th, fingers crossed, but that we do have time between now and then to actually still look at some of these items for us to pass certain things. And so this does not necessarily have to wait until the interim. I've had a discussion with Ms. Lancheski to see if the staff has the capacity, even though she has not had the ability to hire that additional person, to see if staff has the capacity to actually work on this before we adjourn in May. And so just know that we are continuing to work, because we know how important this is. So thank you, Auditor Blaha. Is there any further questions from the commission to Auditor Blaha? Any further discussion? All right, thank you, Auditor, for your time today. We appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for, again, quite a robust amount of activity out of this group. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other testifiers here today? Please make your way to the testifiers table and identify yourself for the record.
Good morning, members, Vice Chair Frentz, Madam Chair Herr. My name is Peter Hendricks. I'm a resident of District 64A. I'm also an attorney, and I'm a proud parent of 2 children who attend public school. I also served on the St. Paul Public Schools Budget and Finance Committee. over a number of years. I would encourage the commission to study Minnesota statutes 356.24 subdivision 3, particularly the compliance of public funds being used to contribute to deferred compensation plans for public school superintendents. The statute limits public contributions to a deferred compensation plan only in the amount of the employee match on a dollar for dollar basis, and the employer contribution cannot exceed the lesser of the maximum authorized by the personnel policy or 1/2 of the annual limit set by IRS rules. For employees who are 50 years old in 2023, that maximum is $15,000. I've reviewed 20 public school superintendent contracts obtained through public data requests. And there are 4 districts that have serious noncompliance with this statute. One district will pay an annual deferred compensation from public funds in 3 areas starting July 1, 2023. One is $9,000 of a match. Number 2 is $10,000 that is not based on a match. And 3 is a contribution to a deferred compensation plan or a longevity plan that is based simply on a percentage of the annual salary of the superintendent. The total deferred compensation in this particular district, assuming the maximum match is received, would be over $31,000 in year 1 of the contract and over $45,000 in year 3 of the contract. Clearly, this amount exceeds 356.24. The district's previous contract with the same superintendent limited the employer contribution to $9,000. Another district has a retirement allocation of 10% of the base salary of $275,000. That is not tied to any match. This amount of the annual deferred compensation is $27,500. Again, it exceeds the statute. A third district has an employer annual contribution starting in July 2023 of up to $17,800 as a district match, which may exceed the amount permitted by statute depending on the IRS limit for the year 2024. And finally, a third district has an employer contribution that is called a retention incentive pay. That is an amount equal to 1.5 months of the superintendent's pay and would be approximately $28,900 in 1 year. Many school districts do comply with the statute, but there are 4 districts that clearly do not. There may be more. So I would encourage the commission to study 356.24. I provided written testimony to all members, and I would stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. And we do have a question. Senator Friends.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. I'm a little unclear. Are you suggesting that this commission review with an eye towards amending or changing 356? Or are you simply calling our attention to the fact that these 4 districts are out of compliance? If it was the second, I wonder if that would be a matter better brought to the attention of the school board or the attorneys that represent the school board for a corrective action.
Mr. Hendricks.
Vice Chair Friends, I'm asking this commission to provide outreach to school districts because I would submit that perhaps the school districts do not know that they are not in compliance.
Senator Friends.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Mr. Hendricks. So, for example, a letter from the chair to all school districts saying, hey, keep an eye on 356. It's important to have compliance.
Mr. Hendricks.
Vice Chair Friends, yes, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, thanks very much for your testimony. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Madam Chair.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the testifier, Mr. Hendricks. And I guess you brought the matter forward, and I guess I'll just put some background and some context to the bigger picture. As we are experiencing in many different areas, labor and worker shortages, it's very pronounced in different parts of the school operations, and particularly superintendents. And I don't know that the school districts, I'm gonna believe that they're doing this in good faith. And if we are going to be reviewing this, I suspect we'll be hearing from school boards and hearing from others saying, we need these kinds of tools to be able to keep people. So without a superintendent, we don't have a school. And more superintendents are retiring, and more of them are getting phone calls and knocks at their door to, please come back out of retirement, would you please come, work part-time on a contract basis. And that's just not recently that's been happening, that's been the last 10 or 15 years. And so it takes a long time to make a superintendent because you have to be a teacher, and then you've got to go through your other administrative steps and additional schooling and training to be able to do that. And so if we are going to undertake the suggestion brought forth by Mr. Hendricks today, I think we also need to arm the school districts with the tools necessary to be able to create compensation packages that will attract and retain superintendents. Because again, we have school districts that are sharing superintendent services out there. And when you get into greater Minnesota, where you may not live on a full-time basis, but you certainly do recreate there, those schools are finding it more and more difficult each and every day to be able to stay fully staffed with qualified people, including their superintendents. So it's maybe a more global issue, even other than superintendents. It's just how do we arm the different agencies and different schools and folks to be able to provide the services necessary to be able to run an education system or keep law enforcement and firefighting and just all of these different areas that are core and basic parts of the charge by the Constitution here in the state of Minnesota. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Driscoll. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. According to Mr. Hendrick's letter, these are IRS rules which are also in Minnesota statutes, I'm asking. And maybe Ms. Lancheski can respond, then who's responsible to police these? Is it the federal government? Is it the Department of Revenue? We've certainly never been faced with anything like this.
Ms. Lancheski or Mr. Hendricks? I'm not sure which person. Ms. Lancheski, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Pappas. There is a reference to the Internal Revenue Code and the limit. The limit is 50% of the federal limit. So there's no chance that we would then violate the federal limit. It's just a reference to limit what is going to be funded here with public funds. So there's no issue there under the federal tax code. And as far as who needs to enforce these, that's been the never-ending question. I think Mr. Hendricks can talk to that issue in that he has tried to get some enforcement. It's been the question. 356.24 is, it's full of requirements, and the question is who enforces them. You know, we've tried to do some communication and post things on our website about what's required, but I don't know who's supposed to, enforce this.
Madam Chair, Ms. Lancheski, not the Department of Revenue, or it's unclear?
Ms. Lancheski.
No, thank you. Not the Department of Revenue here in the state of Minnesota or the feds, the IRS would not do this. This is a question perhaps for the AG or one of the auditors, legislative or state. I don't know where to turn for this.
Thank you, Ms. Lancheski. Mr. Hendricks, did you have any comments to Senator Pappas's question?
Yes, Senator Pappas, I reviewed 20 contracts, many of which refer to actual 356.24, including the one that I cite as the most egregious quote-unquote offender, the first one in my testimony. That contract does actually reference 356.24. So I don't know if the district and the board is not reviewing the statute, or perhaps they don't understand the nuances of it.
Senator Nelson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And just to add a little more light to the discussion about why this might be happening, and the discussion regarding the shortage, particularly of superintendents, I just want to, I think I'd be remiss if we just didn't kind of look at the numbers that might be leading to some of the cases that we're discussing today. So the most recent school business officials survey, just for this year, indicated that the things being put forward in our legislature right now, and it's unclear to me at this point if it's just for the paid family medical leave or if it's all the education mandates in general, and I'll get that detail from you. But at this point, the cost per student is $1,602 per student for what is moving through the legislature right now. And yet the total new school revenue that is moving through the legislature right now under the Senate bill is $782 per student. So if you do the math, you can see that there are a lot of reasons built in that are causing the concern that we're seeing or being addressed today regarding why is it that school districts would be either willfully or not disregarding a statute regarding deferred comp for superintendent. So I think that is something that just needs to be on the record that sometimes we might be setting this up ourselves by what other parts of the legislature are putting forward here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nelson, and I think that we can agree to disagree that that could be a contributing factor. I think that we are looking at seeing that we haven't been fully funding education in itself, and that our teaching profession is harder than it's ever been, and managing these school districts is more difficult. And in the House side, we did peg our bill to inflation, and the Senate did not. And so there is reasons why there is differences between the cost per student or the allocation per student. And so I agree with you that there are many factors that could be leading to this, and that, how we come to understanding this, I think would be a great way for the work group or whoever decides to, take this on, to really look at that and see. And so I appreciate your comments, and I think that we can always look deeper into this and really understand that. So thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Hendricks?
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. You can take a seat. So, members, I just want to open this up for discussion of the items that are on this list and see if anyone has any thoughts or concerns before we wrap up our commission meeting today. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is more procedural. Before the last chair, we often met on a monthly basis or every other month. I know that over the years I've been on the Pension Commission, sometimes there was like an afternoon meeting and then the following morning, so that rural members could drive in and drive out. What is your intention during the interim?
Thank you for that question, Senator Pappas. I have actually been taking suggestions from everyone, and so I have not I think that what will drive when or how often or how long we meet will be based on the number of items that we take up. And I want to make sure that we have the time to do this work well, but I also want to be respectful of all of your time, because in the interim, many of you have other jobs or other responsibilities. And so I will try to balance all of that as we think about how and when we move forward with commission meetings. But I don't, to be honest, I do not have an idea yet as what I think might be the best way to meet during the interim. So if anybody has further suggestions to me, please feel free to text me or call me afterwards, and we can have the discussion. Or now, Representative O'Driscoll.
Since it's on the table, I vote no 8:30 Monday mornings anymore.
Me too, Representative O'Driscoll, me too. Any further discussion on the meeting time for the interim? All right. Any other discussion regarding the items that are on this list? Representative O'Driscoll.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. As those of you who have been on the Pension Commission for more than a day know that your phone will continually ring as soon as people find out you're on the Pension Commission, and the asks and wants are much longer than the capacity to be able to deal with things in a timely fashion. One of the things that I have had folks reach back to me because of just the whole pension conversation, and that is we have codified and looked at rules over the past few years for buying back military, or purchasing for military service, or buying out-of-state school teacher credit to buy back into the plan. Well, I knew it was going to be just a matter of time, but others are starting to say, well, I was in teaching for a while, and now I'd like to buy that credit back, but I'm not going to be able to get the 2 years necessary in service to be able to do that. Is there anything that the legislature could do? Maybe a deeper dive into some of those kinds of conversations, not only in TRA, but in PERA and MSRS, just again to brief the commission on the rules, the background on that, so that we have the capacity in which to be able to answer those questions, or if it's something that does or doesn't need to be readdressed by the commission on a go-forward basis. But that's just starting to be something that's surfacing again, particularly since the teacher discussion has been so prominent this session with the TRA and Education Minnesota push. Some of the other players now that's gathering attention are starting to ask about us too, or what about us, or can we be revisited since we're revisiting the entire package? So just something for consideration.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. And do you see that different than the last bullet point on the first page of that list? That prepare legislation extending the time period for making transfers of past service credits from a general plan to a public safety or correctional plan. Do you see that as an expansion of that, or would this be a good start for kind of what you suggested?
Madam Chair, I'm not exactly sure what you were asking. I'm just grabbing my sheet here and I'm referencing it as well. I just think that that concept for all, at a higher level, and then the commission can kind of drill down and see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense on some of those things. And along that same line and same idea, with House File 1234, with the duty disability, getting those issues resolved and funding. Law enforcement and firefighters are at an extreme disadvantage. And again, if we're looking at recruiting and retention programs, they don't get COLAs for 3 years until after they retire. And I think that that's something that we need to look at addressing, just as much as we do the teacher issue and the pension and the shortage there. I would say top of list, those are probably the two that have the most pressure and the two that have the most work that probably needs to be done to determine what, if anything, we can do to enhance those or modify those to make those retention tools for individuals in those areas, or to attract individuals in there. Again, you don't make law enforcement and teachers and firefighters overnight. There is some skill and training and background licensing and certification that needs to be done. So those may be some areas that we'd want to take a look at as well. And those police and fire COLAs are locked in at 1% when you do start to achieve those. And, paralleling those issues with 1234 and the other, that's only going to cause that to be further and further back for individuals to be able to get caught up to what we're now starting to see MSRS coming through and being able to adjust their COLAs and other plans. So, sorry for the rambling, but I think you kind of get the theme of some of the things that are probably going to be nuts and bolts things that we need to be taking a look at.
Thank you, Representative Driscoll. And I think that as we put, just for all of us to keep in mind as we put this work together, I think all of those items Representative Driscoll brought up are really important for us to look at. And as a reminder of that, some of these things are structural changes to plans which have ongoing costs. And as we all know in the commission, we don't always either get a target or get a consistent target. And so I just want to sort of manage everyone's expectation that we may look at some of these issues, and they may be really great recommendations of what the will of this commission to want to do right by our members who are in these pension plans, but that everything that we do will be dependent on our ability to fund these things. And I think just to lift up what Senator Rasmussen often talks about is that, to not make changes without knowing and without being able to fund those changes. And so I thought that those are great suggestions, Representative Driscoll, and I hope, and I will, as the chair, work with staff and the commission to look at some of these changes, but also to manage our spectators' expectation that just because we bring something forward as something good doesn't necessarily mean that we will be able to do it, because we do not have dedicated targets for our ongoing work. And so we will be trying to balance all of that together. I appreciate it. Thank you, Representative Driscoll. Yes.
Follow up, Madam Chair, I like the idea that we get started on those, because when we have a plan and we can show a need, it's easier to get funding versus waiting for the funding and then saying, now what should we do? I guess helps us to prioritize and have information, and then we can tweak the plan once if and when we do get a target or additional funds that would be coming the way of pension relief.
Absolutely. Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. Great suggestions. Any other comments or questions, discussions? Seeing that there is no further discussion on this, and know that I'm always open for conversations one-to-one outside of this, and so please continue to come meet with me. And so this does conclude our business for today, members. This is the last regularly scheduled meeting of the Commission for the 2023 regular legislative session. Any further meetings will be communicated well in advance until the commencement of the 2024 regular legislative session. Thank you all for your work this year. Seeing there is no further business in front of the committee, this committee is adjourned.